At what should have been the happiest time of my sister decided to bring her old story with my fiancé again and again, turning wedding events into awkward moments, until he finally snapped and confronted her publicly, calling her creepy and obsessive, leaving guests whispering and the room stunned. I need to tell someone this story before it eats me alive completely. My name is Sarah, and 6 months ago I had everything. A gorgeous fiancé named David who worshipped the ground I walked on, a dream wedding planned down to the last detail, a future that looked golden. Now I have nothing, and it's entirely my fault. It started innocently enough, like these things always do. My sister Emma had dated David briefly in college, years before I even met him. When David and I got engaged, she made often comments about their history that made my skin crawl. Nothing explicit, just little digs about how well she knew him, how she remembered his preferences, his habits. At first, I brushed it off. Emma had always been competitive with me growing. But as our wedding approached, her comments became more frequent, more pointed. At the engagement party, she cornered David by the bar and whispered something in his ear that made him go pale. When I asked him about it later, he just said she was being weird and to ignore it. But I couldn't ignore it. The doubt started small, a seed of insecurity that grew every time Emma smiled knowingly when David's name came. Every time she mentioned some inside joke from their past. Every time she made it clear that she knew things about my fiancé that I didn't. 3 weeks before the wedding, during my bachelorette party, Emma had too much to drink. She pulled me aside in the bathroom of the club we were at and said, "No, Sarah, David used to tell me I was the love of his." Funny how people change, right? I should have confronted her then. I should have talked to David. Instead, I let it fester. The breaking point came at our rehearsal dinner. Emma had volunteered to give a toast, against my wishes. She stood, glass in hand, and started talking about how she'd known David since he was just a boy figuring out what love meant. The way she said it, the way she looked at him, made every person in that room uncomfortable. David's face went red. "Emma, that's enough," he said quietly. But she kept going. "I just think it's beautiful how it brings people back together in unexpected ways. How the heart remembers what it truly wants." The room went dead silent. David stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Emma, stop. This is inappropriate and know it. Sarah is my fiancée, the woman I love. And I won't have making everyone uncomfortable with obsession." The word obsession hung in the air like a... Emma's face crumpled. "Obsession, David, we're just trying to my wedding, like been trying to do for months. It's creepy, Emma. Whatever we had was over years ago. Get over it." The silence that followed was deafening. Our families sat frozen, forks halfway to their mouths. Emma ran out of the restaurant crying, and suddenly everyone was staring at me, waiting to see how I'd react. I felt humiliated. Not because of what Emma had done, but because David had handled it so publicly, so harshly. In that moment, surrounded by whispers and pitying looks, something broke inside me. I followed Emma outside. She was sobbing in the parking lot, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she choked out. I never got closure. He broke my heart, Sarah, and seeing him so happy with just brought it all back. For the first time I saw my sister not as but as a broken woman still carrying wounds from years ago. And somehow in that moment of clarity, I realized something terrible. David had never mentioned breaking Emma's heart. He'd made their college relationship sound casual, insignificant. He'd lied to me. The next morning, I called off work and drove to the coffee shop where I'd first met Marcus, a photographer I'd been working with for the wedding. He'd been flirting with me subtly for weeks, complimenting my smile, telling me how lucky David was. I'd always shut it down, but that morning, still reeling from the rehearsal dinner disaster, I didn't look upset, Marcus said when he saw me walk in. "Wedding drama," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Want to talk about it?" And I did. I told him everything. About Emma, about the lies, about how humiliated I felt. Marcus listened with those understanding eyes, reaching across to touch my hand when I started crying. "Deserve better than this," he said softly. "Deserve someone who's completely honest with." Looking back, I can see how calculated it all was, how he played into my insecurity, my anger. But in that moment, I felt seen, understood, desired by someone who wasn't carrying baggage from my sister. When he suggested we go back to his apartment to talk more privately, I said yes. When he me I him back. When he told me David didn't deserve me, I believed him. And when I woke in his bed the next morning, 12 hours before my wedding, I knew I'd destroyed everything. The worst part, Emma had been telling the truth all along. David had broken her heart, but not because he loved her. He'd broken with her because she was too clingy, too dramatic, too much like she'd been at the rehearsal dinner. He'd chosen me because I was different, stable, trustworthy. And I'd proven him wrong in the worst possible way. I have to stop writing for now. My hands are shaking just thinking about what comes next. About the phone call I had to make. About the look on David's face when I told him. About how everything fell apart in one terrible day. I sat in Marcus's apartment for 3 hours that morning, staring at my phone. My wedding dress was in my childhood bedroom. The venue was being decorated. My hair appointment was in 2 hours. And I had to destroy it all with a single phone call. I tried calling David first. It went straight to voicemail. He was probably getting ready with his groomsmen, probably nervous and excited about marrying me in a few hours. The man who defended me publicly against my sister's inappropriate behavior. The man who'd been nothing but honest and loving. My hands shook as I typed the text. "David, I can't marry. I made a terrible mistake. I'm so sorry." I hit send and immediately my phone across Marcus's living room. Marcus came out of the kitchen with coffee, acting like this was all normal. Like he hadn't just helped me my entire. "Feel better?" he asked, settling next to me on his couch like we were a couple. The casualness of it made me sick. I need to go home, I said. Sarah, don't have to feel guilty. We're obviously unhappy, or this wouldn't have happened. Maybe this is the universe telling. Stop, I said, standing abruptly. Just stop talking. The drive home was a blur. I kept expecting David to call me back, to text me, to demand an explanation. But my phone stayed silent. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I could see the chaos through the living room window. My mother was pacing, phone pressed to her ear. My father sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. I walked through the front door still wearing yesterday's clothes and everything stopped. Sarah! My mother dropped her phone. Where have been? David's been calling everyone looking for. The venue is asking questions. The guests are starting to arrive at the church. I can't marry him, I said quietly. The silence that followed was different from the one at the rehearsal dinner. This was the silence of a family watching their daughters implode in real time. What do you mean can't marry him? Dad asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her bridesmaid robe. Her eyes were red from crying, probably from last night's humiliation. When she saw my face, her expression changed from confusion to horror. Oh no, she whispered. Sarah, what did do? And that's when I broke. I collapsed onto the couch and told them everything. About Marcus, about the coffee shop, about waking in his bed this morning. My mother's face went white. My father stood and walked out of the room without a word. Emma just stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Cheated on David. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. The night before wedding. Don't get to judge me, I snapped. This is partly fault with all comments about history with him. My fault. Emma's voice rose. I was being inappropriate, yes, but, Sarah, destroyed marriage before it even started because I was being petty. The way she said it made me realize how insane it sounded. How I'd taken her jealous behavior and twisted it into justification for betraying the best man I'd ever known. My phone buzzed. David. Please just tell me you're safe. I don't understand text. Are having cold feet. We can talk about this. The kindness in his message made me want to throw. Even after I'd shattered his wedding day with a cryptic text, he was worried about my safety. More messages came in rapid succession. Sarah, please call me back. Mom said her home. I'm coming over. Whatever's wrong, we can fix this. I love. That last message broke something inside me that I didn't know could break twice in 24 hours. 20 minutes later, David's car pulled into our driveway. I watched from my childhood bedroom window as he got out, still wearing his wedding suit pants and a wrinkled dress shirt. His hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked destroyed. I heard him talking to my parents downstairs, his voice getting more desperate with each passing minute. Finally, my mother called. Sarah, need to come down here and explain this to him properly. Walking down those stairs felt like walking to my. David was standing in our living room, and when he saw me, his face cycled through relief, confusion, and then dawning horror as he took in my appearance. Weren't at bachelorette party last night, he said slowly. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. Where were Sarah? The way he said my name, like he was afraid of the answer, made my chest tight. With someone else, I whispered. David sat down heavily on our couch, the same couch where I used to curl and plan our future together. Someone else, he repeated, like he was testing the words. We're with someone else the night before our wedding. David. His voice was sharp now. Who was worth destroying us? Marcus, the photographer. David's face went through several expressions before settling on something I'd never seen before. Disgust. The photographer who's been hitting on for weeks. The one said handled. I did handle it, until what? Until my evil fiancé publicly embarrassed sister for being inappropriate at our rehearsal dinner, so decided to get revenge by sleeping with another man. Put like that, it sounded even worse than it was. Wasn't revenge, I said weakly. I was confused and what? Thought cheating on me would make feel better. Emma had been silent through this whole exchange, but now she spoke. David, I need to know that what I did last night was wrong. I was jealous and inappropriate, and I'm sorry. David looked her with tired eyes. Emma, behavior was weird and uncomfortable, but it wasn't marriage ending. He gestured at me. This is something else entirely. I know, I said. I know I messed. But maybe we can work through. Work through what? David stood, and I could see his hands shaking. Cheated on me 12 hours before our wedding. Our families are at the church right now. I had to call my grandmother and tell her not to come because my bride disappeared. The image of his sweet grandmother, who'd been so excited about our wedding, getting that phone call made me start crying again. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't undo this, Sarah. Sorry doesn't give me back my trust in. Sorry doesn't explain to 200 guests why there's no wedding today. He walked toward the door, then stopped. The worst part is, if just talked to me about Emma's behavior, I would have handled it differently. I would have had a private conversation with her instead of embarrassing her publicly. But never gave me that chance, went straight to betrayal. After he left, the silence in the house was unbearable. My phone started buzzing with calls from bridesmaids, relatives and friends who'd heard about the cancelled wedding. By evening, it was all over social media, not the details, but enough. Sarah's wedding called off last minute. Drama at the rehearsal dinner. Something happened with the photographer. That last post, from someone who'd seen Marcus at the venue earlier in the week, made my run cold. People were putting pieces together. By midnight, I had 17 missed calls, 43 unread texts, and a Facebook message from David's sister that simply said, I hope it was worth it. Sitting in my childhood bedroom, still in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by wedding presents that would need to be returned, I realized that this was just the beginning. The real consequences were still coming. 6 months later, I'm writing this from a studio apartment across town that smells like cigarettes from the previous tenant. Heard. The walls are thin enough that I can hear my neighbor's TV through the drywall, and my bed is a mattress on the floor. This is what rock bottom looks like. The first month after the wedding that never was, I kept expecting things to settle down, for people to move on, for the story to fade into background gossip. I was so naive. Marcus disappeared the day after, of course. When I called him desperate and spiraling, he said he was sorry things got complicated, and that maybe we should take some space. Take some space. Like we'd been in a relationship, like he hadn't just been a convenient way to destroy my. I found out later he'd moved to another city for a new job. A job he'd already accepted weeks before our night together. He'd used me as a going-away present to himself. David's friends made sure everyone knew what really happened. Not exactly, but the truth has a way of spreading when someone beloved gets. Within 2 weeks, everyone in our social circle knew I'd cheated with the wedding photographer the night before my wedding. The photographer detail made it worse somehow. More salacious, more pathetic. I lost every mutual friend David and I had shared. Not because they chose sides, but because what I'd done was so fundamentally disturbing that being around me felt uncomfortable. I was a reminder that people trust completely can destroy without warning. Wedding vendors started canceling my vendor reviews online. The florist, the caterer. Even the venue posted responses to negative reviews mentioning clients who create chaos and waste everyone's time. They never named me directly, but everyone knew. My job became unbearable. I work in marketing for a small firm. Heard and half our clients had been at the wedding or knew people who were. Meetings became awkward. Clients requested different account managers. My boss, who'd been excited about my wedding, could barely look at me. I got demoted within 6 weeks. Pay, smaller office, fewer responsibilities. When I tried to discuss it with HR, they said my personal situation was affecting my professional relationships and client retention. They were right. Emma and I haven't spoken since that awful morning. She moved out of our parents' house and got her own place. When I tried to call her a month later to apologize, she sent me straight to voicemail. Her message was simple. I was inappropriate and jealous, but turned my bad behavior into an excuse to destroy a good man who loved. I can't forgive that. She was right too. My parents still talk to me, but it's different now. They look at me like they're seeing a stranger wearing their daughter's face. Like they're wondering what else I'm capable of. Sunday dinners became strained, then infrequent, then stopped altogether. We love, Mom said the last time we talked, but we're ashamed of what did, and we don't know how to get past that. The worst part is David. Not because he's cruel or vindictive, but because he's not. He never bad-mouthed me publicly, never posted angry social media rants, never tried to turn people against me. His silence was somehow more devastating than any revenge could have been. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he went to therapy after our breakup. That he struggled to trust people for months. That he had panic when his new girlfriend went out with friends. I broke something fundamental in a genuinely good person. And he had to rebuild himself because of my selfishness. 3 months ago, I saw him at the grocery store. He looked healthy, happier. He was with a woman I didn't recognize, someone pretty, and laughing at something he'd said. When he saw me, his face went carefully neutral. "Sarah," he said politely. I managed. That was it. No anger, no drama, just the polite acknowledgement give a stranger. I cried in my car for an hour afterward, not because I wanted him back, but because I realized he'd moved on completely. I was just a cautionary tale in his past now, something that taught him to pay attention to red flags. The woman he was with looked at him the way I used to. Like he was everything good in the world. And he was looking at her the same way he used to look at me. Last month, I found out through social media that they got engaged. Her ring was smaller than the one David had given me, but in the photos, she looked happier than I'd ever looked wearing mine. Heard the comments on their engagement post were all congratulations and heart emojis. No one mentioned me. No one said, "I hope this one works out better," or made any reference to David's previous relationship. I'd been completely erased from his story, which was exactly what I deserved. I've been on exactly 3 dates since that night with Marcus. Each one ended the same way. The story comes out eventually, because our city isn't that big and people talk. And when men hear that I cheated on my fiancé the night before our wedding, they look at me differently. Like I'm fundamentally broken. Like I'm dangerous. Like I'm someone who can't be trusted with their heart. They're not wrong. I've tried therapy. But what is there to work through? I wasn't abused. I wasn't trapped in a relationship. I had everything I claimed to want and it away because my sister was jealous and I was too proud to have in conversation with the man I was about to marry. There's no healing from being that fundamentally selfish, and some mistakes make and learn from. Others make and live with forever, carrying them like a scar that never quite stops. I destroyed the best relationship I'll ever have because I couldn't handle one uncomfortable evening. I chose temporary validation from a man who didn't care about me over a lifetime with a man who would have done anything for me. There's no coming back from that level of betrayal. No redemption arc. No lesson learned that makes it worth it. Just the hollow knowledge that some people are capable of throwing away everything good in their lives for absolutely nothing, and I'm one of them. If we're reading this and thinking about doing something similar, if we're justifying betrayal because someone feelings or made doubt, let me be clear, it's not worth it. Whatever temporary satisfaction think you'll get, whatever validation are seeking, whatever revenge think you're getting, it will never ever be worth the lifetime of regret that follows. Some choices don't just change. They end it and leave walking around in the ruins of who used to be.